To understand how it all ended, you need to understand how it began. And it began not in a boardroom or office, but around our family's dinner table with my father's business plans in one hand and my own startup proposal in the other. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. If this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. While other kids were playing sports or hanging out with friends, I was fascinated by the world of technology and innovation. The digital landscape was evolving rapidly, creating opportunities that traditional businesses couldn't see. It was a complex, beautiful puzzle, and I was good at it. I could see patterns others missed. Building software didn't feel like work, it felt like a calling. That proposal was for my tech startup, RapidFlow, and it felt like the key to my entire future. After months of research, development, and securing interest from angel investors, I was ready to share my vision with my family. My heart raced with anticipation as I prepared to reveal what I believed would revolutionize supply chain logistics. I found them all at the dinner table, that imposing mahogany monstrosity that had witnessed generations of Reed family business discussions. My father, Richard Reed, sat at the head, his silver hair perfectly combed, his custom Italian suit still impeccable after a full day at the office. He was in the middle of a toast. His face, usually a stern mask of corporate discipline, was beaming with a pride so bright it was almost blinding, a pride he never showed me. To Nathan he boomed, his voice echoing with authority as he raised a glass of 30-year-old scotch. My son has just secured the Westbrook contract. 7 figures, renewable annually, and the biggest client acquisition in Red Enterprises' 40-year history. My mother, Eleanor, smiled her default smiler. Perfectly pleasant, perfectly empty expression she wore like an expensive piece of jewelry. It was her armor against conflict, her shield against taking a stand in our family's endless power struggles. My brother Nathan, 3 years my senior, just soaked it all in. He had the easy, polished confidence of a man who had never had to fight for anything, a man whose every minor victory was treated like a historic triumph. He was the son my father had groomed from birth of elite education, perfect golf swing, and an unquestioning devotion to the family business of industrial equipment manufacturing. The applause from my parents died down. I took a deep breath, the proposal in my hand suddenly feeling flimsy and insignificant. "Dad," I started, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "That's great news for Nathan. I've got something to share too." My father's gaze shifted to me, but it was a passing glance. The way you'd look at a piece of furniture you'd forgotten was in the room. "I've been developing a logistics software platform," I said, trying to inject some excitement into my voice. "RapidFlow. It uses AI to optimize supply chains in real time. I've got 3 angel investors ready to commit seed funding, and I've already built a working prototype. It could revolutionize how businesses manage inventory," and the air grew still. The celebratory mood evaporated like morning dew under a harsh sun. Nathan smirked into his glass. I watched my father's face, saw the gears turning, saw him process the information and file it under irrelevant disappointment. He took a slow sip of his scotch, setting the glass down with a deliberate soft click that sounded like a judge's. "Gavel? Software?" he said, the word emerging from his mouth as if it tasted bitter. "Apps and websites? That's what you've been wasting your time on?" "It's not just an app, Dad. It's an enterprise-level platform that could enough." He cut me off, his voice sharp as a blade. "We are a Reed Enterprises family. For 4 decades, we've built actual things machines that power America's factories. We don't play with computers and chase digital fantasies."
"Oh."
My mother saw the look on my face. She saw the hurt, and she did what she always did, tried to smooth it over in a way that only made it worse. "Now, Richard," she said with a light, tinkling laugh, "be nice. I'm sure Joshua's little computer project is very clever. It might make a nice hobby while he learns the real business from you and Nathan. Hobby. Little project." The dismissal stung worse than outright criticism. "It's not a hobby," I insisted, my voice stronger now. "I've spent 2 years developing this. The market potential is enormous, and I've already got interest from serious investors who see its value, even if you don't." My father's face darkened. He had never tolerated being challenged, especially not at his own dinner table. Investors? He scoffed. Venture capital vultures who will own your soul and discard you when the next shiny toy comes along. The Reed name means something in real industries, Joshua. We build legacies, not apps that disappear with the next technology fad. Nathan leaned forward, his expression a mixture of pity and condescension. Listen to Dad, Josh. I know you've always been the creative one, but there's a place for you at Red Enterprises. You just need to grow up and accept your responsibilities. Grow up. As if pursuing my own vision was childish, as if innovation was a phase I needed to outgrow. I don't want a place at Reed Enterprises, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion churning inside. I want to build something of my own. Something that matters. My father slammed his hand on the table, making the crystal glasses jump. His face had turned an alarming shade of red. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Everything I've built for 40 years doesn't matter? He demanded. The company that put food on your table, clothes on your back, paid for that fancy computer science degree you're so eager to waste that doesn't matter. That's not what I meant. You've always been like this, he continued, the dam of his disappointment finally breaking. Always in your own world, always thinking you know better than everyone else. I've waited years for you to outgrow this. It's rebellion. But you're 34 years old, Joshua. It's time to stop playing entrepreneur and join the real world. I felt a lifetime of frustration crystallize into something hard and immovable within me. The real world isn't just manufacturing anymore, Dad. Technology is transforming every industry, including yours. Reed Enterprises needs to adapt, or it will be left behind. My father went very still. When he spoke again, his voice was cold and precise. I've given you every opportunity. I've been patient. I've waited for you to come to your senses, but I'm done waiting. He looked me directly in the eyes, his gaze unflinching. You have a choice to make right now, Joshua. Either you commit to Reed Enterprises, or you walk away completely. There is no middle ground. The ultimatum hung in the air like a guillotine blade. My mother gasped softly. Even Nathan looked uncomfortable, setting down his glass with careful precision. Can't abandon my company, I said quietly. I believe in what I'm building. My father's expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. Not anger, but a terrible finality. Then you are dead to me. The words fell like stones in the silence. Richard. My mother protested weakly. I mean it, he continued, his voice devoid of emotion. If you choose this path, you are no longer my son. You will receive nothing from me, no support, no inheritance, no connection to this family or its legacy. You'll be on your own, completely. I looked around the table at my father's cold fury, my mother's helpless distress, my brother's shocked silence. This was the moment everything changed, the point of no return. If that's how it has to be, I said, rising from my chair, then I guess I'm on my own. I walked out of that dining room with nothing but my proposal and the clothes on my back. Behind me, I heard my mother beginning to cry, my father telling her to pull herself together, Nathan calling my name once before falling silent. Something inside me didn't just harden that night, it crystallized. It became a sharp, cold, diamond-hard point of resolve. My father thought my path was lesser. My mother thought my work was just a hobby. My brother thought I needed to grow up. Fine, they wanted to see me fail. I'd show them success beyond anything they could imagine. I would go down this path they so casually dismissed. I would become so essential, so innovative, so successful in my own quiet way that they wouldn't be able to ignore me. One day, they would look at me and they wouldn't see the family disappointment. They would see a man who had forged his own power on his own terms. I had just been disowned. But in that moment, I was freer than I had ever been. The crushing weight of family expectations had been lifted, replaced by a singular purpose. To build something remarkable, something that would force them to see me for who I truly was. I just never imagined how much it would cost to get their ore, how completely the tables would turn. The next 2 years were a crucible of challenges and growth. I cashed out my savings, moved into a tiny studio apartment in the Innovation District, and poured every ounce of my energy into RapidFlow. Days blurred into nights as I refined algorithms, pitched to investors, and assembled a small but brilliant team who believed in my vision. While Reed Enterprises continued making the same industrial equipment they'd produced for decades, I was building something that would transform how those very machines were deployed and managed. The irony wasn't lost on me. My core team became my new family. Maya Chen, a brilliant data scientist, who left a cushy job at a tech giant because she believed in our mission. She had a no-nonsense approach and a built-in bullshit detector that never failed. We had a rocky start, she saw my founder title and my academic background, and pegged me as another trust fund kid playing entrepreneur. With all due respect, Joshua, she'd said during one of our early development meetings. Her arms crossed. Sometimes you need to trust the data, not just your instincts. Your approach to the inventory prediction algorithm isn't scaling. With all due respect, Maya, I'd replied, pulling up my test results. My instincts are based on data you haven't seen yet. Look at these simulation runs. She'd stared at the numbers, then at me, her skepticism slowly transforming into grudging respect. All right, boss, we'll do it your way. But if it crashes our servers again, it's on you. We did it my way. And 2 weeks later, our system successfully processed 1 million virtual transactions without a hiccup. After that, Maya's trust was absolute. She became my staunchest defender and most honest critic. Then there was Devin Jackson, our charismatic sales lead, who could charm investors with his infectious enthusiasm for our product. Only 26, with an uncanny ability to translate complex technical features into business benefits that made even the most conservative executives lean forward with interest. Just tell me what we're building next, Josh, he'd always say, and I'll make sure people throw money at us to get it. He thought my technical vision was some kind of superpower. You're the Elon Musk of supply chain management, minus the Twitter meltdowns. The weight of his cheerful, unwavering faith in me was both uplifting and terrifying. I felt a duty to make good on the future he so confidently sold to our clients and investors. And rounding out our core team was Ellie Martinez, a former factory floor manager who understood the real-world problems we were trying to solve better than any of us. She was quiet but perceptive, able to spot flaws in our system that our most sophisticated tests missed. That won't work in practice, she'd say simply, pointing to a feature we'd spent weeks developing. The forklift operators won't have time to input that much data between loads. I spent hours with her, not as her boss, but as a student, learning the practical realities of the environments our software would need to thrive in. The best technology adapts to people, I told her once, not the other way around. Together, we built something remarkable. RapidFlow wasn't just another startup. With a clever idea, it was becoming a genuine innovation in supply chain management. Our AI could predict inventory needs, optimize shipping routes, and reduce waste in ways that translated to millions in savings for our clients. We were lean, hungry, and driven by a shared vision. Then came the call that changed everything. I was working late, refining our newest feature set, when my phone rang. It was my mother, her voice thin and strained through the speaker. Joshua, are you there? It had been over a year since I'd heard from her. After that final dinner, my parents had enforced the disownment with ruthless efficiency. My calls went unanswered, my emails returned. Even at Christmas, there had been nothing but silence. Mom, what's wrong? It's your father, she said, her voice breaking. He's had a heart attack. He's in the hospital. It's serious, Joshua. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Despite everything that had happened, despite the hurt and rejection, he was still my father. Which hospital? I asked, already grabbing my keys. Memorial West. But Joshua, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Joshua, wait, there's something else. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Nathan has been making decisions at the company. Bad decisions. Your father was under tremendous stress because Reed Enterprises is in trouble. The admission stunned me. Reed Enterprises, the unassailable family legacy, the paragon of stability, was faltering. What kind of trouble? I don't understand all the details. Something about contracts being lost, inventory problems, cash flow issues. Nathan says everything is under control, but your father was worried, very worried. I arrived at the hospital to find my mother sitting alone in the waiting room, looking smaller and older than I remembered. Nathan was nowhere to be seen. In surgery, she explained, her perfectly manicured hands twisting a tissue into shreds. Nathan had to go back to the office. Right. He said there was an emergency he couldn't delegate, an emergency more important than his father's surgery. Was the first red flag. My father survived the operation, but the heart attack had been severe. As he lay unconscious in the ICU, connected to a maze of tubes and monitors, I felt a complicated mix of emotions: concern for his health, lingering hurt from his rejection, and a growing suspicion about what was happening at Reed Enterprises. While my father recovered, I began quietly investigating the company's situation. What I discovered was alarming. Reed Enterprises was not just in trouble. It was on the verge of collapse. Nathan had mismanaged several major contracts, invested in expansion at precisely the wrong time, and neglected the core business that had sustained the company for decades. But the most disturbing discovery was what had triggered my father's heart attack. The Westbrook contract, the very one Nathan had been celebrated for securing at that fateful dinner, had been lost. Not due to competition or changing market conditions, but due to catastrophic failures in fulfillment and delivery. Reed Enterprises simply couldn't keep up with the order volume or meet the delivery schedules they had promised. The irony was painful and perfect. The very problems my software was designed to solve were destroying my family's company. When my father regained consciousness and stability a week later, he refused to see me. Even from his hospital bed, his pride remained intact. Nathan, meanwhile, grew increasingly hostile to my presence, insisting that I was interfering in business matters that were none of my concern. But my mother, perhaps seeing the writing on the wall, began to change. The carefully maintained facade of family harmony had cracked, revealing the frightened woman beneath. "Joshua," she said one evening as we sat in the hospital cafeteria, "I know you and your father have your differences, but the company is your legacy too. If there's anything you can do to help." I looked at her really, looked at her perhaps. For the first time, "Why now, Mom? I ask for my help now, when for 2 years I've been dead to this family." She had the grace to look ashamed. "We were wrong," she said simply. "Your father was wrong. I was wrong for not standing up to him. But this isn't about making amends, Joshua. This is about survival. Reed Enterprises employs over 300 people. If it fails, the implications didn't need to be stated. 300 families, a 40-year legacy. And yes, despite everything, my family's welfare. I'll need to see the books," I said. "Finally, all of them. And I'll need to talk to the operations team without Nathan interfering." She nodded, relief washing over her face. "I'll make it happen." What followed was 3 weeks of the most intense work I'd ever done. By day, I ran RapidFlow, keeping our momentum going and our clients happy. By night, I dove into the chaotic mess of Reed Enterprises operations, trying to understand just how bad things really were. The answer was worse than anyone realized. Nathan had been hiding the true extent of the problems from everyone, including my father. Contracts weren't just being fulfilled late, some weren't being fulfilled at all. Cash reserves that should have lasted years were nearly depleted. And the company's reputation, once rock solid, was in tatters among its most important clients. I brought Maya in to help analyze the data. Her assessment was blunt and devastating. "They're 6 months from bankruptcy, tops," she said, looking up from her laptop. "Their inventory management is like something from the 1980s. They have no real-time tracking, no predictive ordering, nothing. They're flying blind, Josh." The solution was obvious to both of us. But implementing it would require something my father had rejected outright: technological innovation, specifically an integration of RapidFlow's core technology into Reed Enterprises operations. I prepared a comprehensive proposal, not the eager pitch of a son seeking approval. but the professional assessment of a technology CEO addressing a company in crisis. I detailed exactly how RapidFlow could transform Reed Enterprises' operations, the timeline for implementation, the costs, and most importantly, the projected outcomes. When my father was finally discharged from the hospital, a board meeting was called to discuss the company's future. Nathan had no choice but to allow it. Too many questions were being asked by too many important people. The boardroom of Reed Enterprises was exactly as I remembered it from my childhood visit, imposing, traditional, with the portraits of my grandfather and father hanging on the wood-paneled walls. The board members, mostly old friends of my father and a few industry veterans, looked grave as they took their seats. My father sat at the head of the table, physically diminished by his health crisis, but still commanding respect with his presence. Nathan sat at his right hand, a position of traditional authority that now seemed precarious at best. I was seated far down the table, almost an afterthought. As Nathan began his presentation, a masterclass in corporate doublespeak and obfuscation, I watched the board members' faces. They weren't buying it. They knew something was deeply wrong, even if they couldn't pinpoint exactly what. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't waste time on family drama or personal vindication. I simply presented the facts, the analysis, and the solution. RapidFlow's technology, implemented throughout Reed Enterprises' operations, could streamline their fulfillment, optimize their inventory, and potentially save the company from bankruptcy. This isn't just software, I concluded, looking directly at my father for the first time. This is a complete operational transformation. It's not a quick fix-it, a new foundation for the next 40 years of Reed Enterprises. The room was silent when I finished. My father's face was unreadable, a mask of careful consideration. Nathan looked like he'd been struck. "You want us to bet the company's survival on your startup?" he finally sputtered. "Your pet project? I want you to bet the company's survival on proven technology that has already saved our clients millions." I corrected him. Technology that directly addresses the problems that are killing Reed Enterprises right now. One of the board members, an old friend of my grandfather's named Walter Simmons, leaned forward. "How quickly could this be implemented?" "The core systems could be up within 30 days, I said. "Integration would take about 3 months, and the cost?" asked another board member. I took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. RapidFlow would provide the technology at cost in exchange for equity in Reed Enterprises. The room erupted. Nathan was on his feet, shouting about family betrayal and corporate takeovers. My father's face had gone pale. The board members were talking over one another. Walter Simmons banged his hand on the table. "Enough," he thundered. "Let the young man finish." When quiet returned, I continued. RapidFlow would take a 30% equity stake in Reed Enterprises. In return, we provide not just our technology, but a complete operational overhaul. We're not just offering software, we're offering salvation. My father finally spoke, his voice rougher than I remembered, weakened by his illness, but still carrying the weight of authority. And who would run this? Integration. The question hung in the air, the real issue finally surfacing. This wasn't just about technology or equity. This was about control, about leadership, about the future of the Reed name. I would oversee the technology implementation, I said carefully. The operational decisions would remain with the current leadership. It was a diplomatic answer, but everyone in the room knew what it meant. I would have visibility into every aspect of the company's operations. I would become indispensable. My father and I locked eyes across the table. In his gaze, I saw a complex mix of emotions: pride, resentment, fear, and perhaps, just perhaps, a grudging respect. The board voted that day to approve my proposal over Nathan's vehement objections. My father abstained, a silent acknowledgement that he was caught between the son he had chosen and the son who might save his legacy. As the meeting adjourned, my father remained seated while the others filed out. I lingered, unsure if he wanted to speak to me or simply couldn't summon the energy to stand yet. When we were alone, he finally spoke. "You found a way back in," he said, his voice neutral, unreadable. "After everything, I'm not doing this to prove a point, Dad. I'm doing it because it's the right solution for a real problem." He studied me, his gaze sharp despite his weakened state. "You really believe in this technology of yours?" It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "I do," and soon you will too." He nodded slowly, then gathered his strength to stand. As he moved toward the door, leaning slightly on the cane his doctor had insisted upon, he paused beside me. "You're still not forgiven," he said quietly, "but you're no longer dead to me." It wasn't an embrace. It wasn't even really acceptance. But it was a starter crack in the wall that had been built between us. As he walked away, I remained in the boardroom, looking at the portraits on the wall, wondering if someday mine would join them. Not as the son who surrendered to tradition, but as the son who transformed it. I had won the first battle. But the war for Reed Enterprises' future and for my place in it was just beginning. The integration of RapidFlow's technology into Reed Enterprises began like a delicate surgery on a critical patient. Every system we touched, every process we examined revealed more damage than initially apparent. What should have been a straightforward modernization quickly became a comprehensive rescue operation. I established a temporary office in the heart of the Reed Enterprises headquarters, a glass-walled space that had once been a conference room, now transformed into a command center. Filled with monitors, whiteboards covered in flowcharts, and a rotating team of RapidFlow's best engineers. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The prodigal son had returned, but on his own terms, bringing the future with him. Maya led our technical team, meticulously mapping Reed's outdated systems and planning the integration points for our technology. Her precision was surgical, her patience with the old guard IT staff remarkable. "These systems aren't just outdated," she told me one evening, her voice hushed as we reviewed progress. "They're prehistoric. It's like they actively avoided innovation for decades. Each day revealed new challenges. Inventory records existed in multiple incompatible systems. Production schedules were still managed primarily through spreadsheets and manual entries. Customer orders often required physical paperwork to move through fulfillment. The company hadn't just failed to embrace the digital age, it had barricaded itself against it." "Your brother didn't cause this mess," Maya observed. "Scrolling through years of legacy data, he just failed to fix what was already broken." She was right. Nathan had inherited a company that was fundamentally stuck in the past, its processes calcified by decades of "that's how we've always done it" thinking. My father had built a successful business in his era, but he had stopped evolving it long before stepping back from day-to-day operations. Nathan, trained to follow rather than innovate, had simply maintained the status quo until market realities made that impossible. The first real breakthrough came 3 weeks into the integration. We had successfully migrated the main inventory database to our system and implemented real-time tracking for the flagship product line. The moment the system went live, alerts immediately flagged critical shortages in key components that would have halted production within days, shortages that the old system hadn't detected. I called an emergency meeting with the production managers and purchasing team. The conference room filled quickly, faces tense with the expectation of bad news. "Our system has identified a critical shortage in the J47 connectors," I explained, projecting the data onto the screen. "Current usage rates, production of the Hayes line will stop completely in 6 days." Frank Carter, the veteran production manager who had worked for my father for 20 years, looked skeptical. "Can't be right. We'll always maintain a 3-week buffer on all components." "In theory, yes," I agreed, switching to another screen. "But look at the actual usage data from the factory floor over the past month. Consumption has increased by 38% due to the Wilson contract requirements, but purchasing orders haven't adjusted." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just a theoretical exercise anymore. This was RapidFlow preventing a very real disaster. "How quickly can we get new stock?" asked Susan from purchasing, already pulling out her phone. "That's the second part," I said, bringing up another screen. "The system has already generated emergency purchase orders from 3 alternate suppliers, ranked by delivery time and cost. If we approve these now, we can get a partial shipment by Friday and avoid any production stoppage." The meeting transformed from crisis management to problem solving in minutes. As the team mobilized to implement the solution, I caught Frank giving me an appraising look, not quite approval, but something close to respect. That single incident did more for our integration efforts than weeks of presentations and explanations. Word spread quickly through the company. The new system had prevented a shutdown. The computer stuff that many had dismissed as unnecessary. Complexity had just saved jobs and contracts. Resistance to change began to soften. Staff who had been reluctant to learn new processes started showing up at training sessions. Managers who had been protecting their departmental fiefdoms began sharing data more willingly. The culture was shifting, one small victory at a time. Of course, not everyone was thrilled with these developments. Nathan watched from the sidelines, his initial vocal opposition transforming into a cold, calculated resistance. He couldn't openly fight the board-approved integration, but he found subtle ways to undermine its scheduling conflicting meetings. For key staff, questioning the necessity of system changes, quietly encouraging department heads to delay providing information. I tried to include him, to find ways for him to contribute meaningfully to the transformation. Nathan, we need someone who understands the client relationships to help design the new CRM interface. I offered during one particularly tense executive meeting. Your insights would be valuable. The smile was tight and didn't reach his eyes. I'm sure your tech people have it all figured out, Joshua. Don't let me get in the way of progress. The passive aggression was palpable, but I refused to be baited into a confrontation. This wasn't about Nathan and me anymore. It was about saving 300 jobs and a 40-year legacy. My father, meanwhile, was largely absent from the company as he recovered. His doctor had ordered reduced work hours and minimal stress prescriptions. That seemed impossible for a man who had built his identity around his business. But his heart attack had shaken him deeply, forcing a reckoning with his mortality that even his legendary stubbornness couldn't ignore. I visited him at home one evening, bringing printouts of our progress reports and key metrics that showed the early positive impacts of the integration. The house I'd grown up in felt strangely foreign, now still immaculately maintained. Still filled with the same furniture and artwork, but somehow different. Or perhaps I was the one who had changed. I found him in his study, seated in the leather chair where he had conducted so much business over the years. He looked smaller somehow, the vital force that had always seemed to radiate from him dimmed by illness and uncertainty. The Wilson contract shipments are back on schedule, I said, after the requisite small talk about his health. We've eliminated the backlog that was building up. He nodded, reviewing the papers I'd brought. And the Daniels account? Nathan was concerned about their order specifications, already addressed. Our new system flagged the discrepancies. In their requirements before production began, we've adjusted the specs and confirmed with their purchasing department. My father was silent for a long moment, studying the numbers with the careful attention to detail that had characterized his entire career. Finally, he looked up at me, his expression unreadable. This technology of yours, he said slowly. Making a difference? Coming from him, it was equivalent to a standing ovation. I felt a small surge of pride, quickly tempered by the memory of his rejection 2 years earlier. What might have been different if he had seen the potential then? It's not just the technology, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. It's how we're applying it to real business problems. RapidFlow isn't about replacing people. It's about giving them better tools to do their jobs. He set the papers down carefully. Your brother says you're building a case to take over completely, that this equity arrangement is just the first step. Of course, Nathan would frame it that way. The equity arrangement was necessary to save a company that was headed for bankruptcy, I said, unable to keep a slight edge from my voice. If I wanted to watch Reed Enterprises fail, I could have just stayed away. Then what do you want? Joshua, he asked directly, his gaze sharp, despite his weakened state. What's your endgame here? The question caught me off guard. What did I want? Vindication? Revenge? Control? Or something else entirely? I want Reed Enterprises to survive. And thrive, I said finally. I want the people who work there to keep their jobs. And yes, I want recognition that my approach, the one you dismissed, has value in your brother. Where does Nathan fit in this vision of yours? The question was loaded, freighted with decades of family dynamics and his own clear preference. For his eldest son, it's up to Nathan, I answered carefully. He's talented, he knows the clients, he understands the industry. There's a place for him, if he's willing to adapt. My father nodded slowly, absorbing my words. You've changed, he said after a moment. You're harder than you were. I had to be, I replied simply. When I left that night, driving, Away from the house where I'd grown up feeling like a perpetual disappointment, I felt strangely untethered. For so long, my actions had been defined in opposition to my father's expectations, either struggling to meet them or deliberately defying them. Now I was charting a course guided by my own vision, my own values. It was liberating and terrifying. In equal measure, back at RapidFlow's offices, my team was working late, as had become our norm during the integration. Maya was deep in code, troubleshooting an issue with the production scheduling module. Devin was preparing presentations for potential new clients. Our regular business continuing despite the all-consuming Read project. Ellie was on a video call with floor managers, patiently explaining how the new system would change their daily workflows. This was my real legacy, not the Read name or manufacturing equipment, but innovation that solved real problems. A company built on seeing the future clearly and helping others navigate toward it. As I watched my team work, I felt a surge of gratitude and purpose. Whatever happened with Read Enterprises, this was worth fighting for. The turning point came 6 weeks into the integration, when we finally implemented the full supply chain optimization module. This was the heart of RapidFlow's technology, the AI-driven system that could predict inventory needs, identify bottlenecks before they formed, and automatically adjust production schedules to maximize efficiency. Within the first 24 hours, the system identified a pattern that had been invisible in the fragmented old processes. Red Enterprises was consistently overproducing certain components, while underproducing others, creating expensive inventory imbalances that rippled throughout the production cycle. The solution was a relatively simple adjustment to the manufacturing schedule, but the impact was immediate and dramatic. I presented the findings at the weekly executive meeting, which my father had finally been cleared to attend, though in a limited capacity. The room was tense. Nathan had been increasingly hostile in recent days, and rumors of major changes were circulating throughout the company. By implementing these scheduling adjustments, I concluded, showing the projected impact graphs, we can reduce inventory costs by approximately 22%, while improving order fulfillment times by nearly 30%. The system has already begun implementing these changes, and we should see the first results by the end of the month. There was a murmur of impressed reactions from the department heads. Even the most skeptical had begun to see the benefits of the new systems as their own jobs became easier and long-standing problems began to resolve. Nathan, however, was seething. So your computers are making production decisions now? What exactly do you need the rest of us for? The system makes recommendations based on data, I corrected him. People make the decisions. The expertise in this room is more valuable than ever. Now it's informed by complete, accurate information instead of guesswork and habit. Guesswork and habit, Nathan repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. Is that what you think built this company? Is that what you think Dad created? My father raised a hand, silencing what was clearly building toward an explosion. The results speak for themselves, he said firmly. The integration is working. The Westbrook contract negotiations have reopened. The Wilson deliveries are ahead of schedule. We're seeing positive changes across all departments. Nathan's face flushed dark red. So that's it? Joshua waltzes back in with his software and suddenly he's the golden boy. After abandoning the company when it needed him? I didn't abandon Read Enterprises, I said evenly. I was told I was dead to this family because I chose to build something innovative instead of following the prescribed path. Enough. My father's voice cracked with authority, a glimpse of his former power. This meeting is about business, not family grievances. But Nathan was beyond reason, years of resentment boiling over. It's always been about family. You built this company for us, your sons, and he rejected it. He rejected you. He's using our crisis to take control. The room fell silent, the other executives visibly uncomfortable witnessing this family drama. My father's face was grave, his eyes moving between Nathan and me, as if seeing us both clearly for the first time. Is that what you believe, Nathan? He asked quietly. That Joshua is orchestrating a takeover? Look at the evidence, Nathan insisted. His company takes an equity stake. His people are embedded throughout our operations. Every system now depends on his technology. He's making himself indispensable while making the rest of us obsolete. My father turned to me. And you, Joshua? What do you say to these accusations? I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. RapidFlow's integration with Reed Enterprises is saving a company that was on the brink of failure. Yes, it's making fundamental changes to how things operate. Yes, it's requiring everyone to adapt. But the alternative was bankruptcy and 300 lost jobs. I looked directly at Nathan. I'm not trying to replace you or anyone else. I'm trying to give all of you the tools to succeed in a market that has evolved while Reed Enterprises stood still. The tension in the room was palpable. My father looked older than I had ever seen him, the weight of this conflict between his sons visibly taxing his already fragile health. This meeting is adjourned, he said finally. Joshua, Nathan, my office. Now, as the other executives filed out, relief at escaping the family confrontation evident on their faces, I prepared myself for what was to come. This showdown had been brewing since the moment I returned, perhaps even since that fateful dinner 2 years ago. My father's office was a temple to the past wood-paneled walls covered with framed photographs of handshakes. With important clients, awards from industry associations, and newspaper clippings documenting Reed Enterprises' growth over the decades. It was a physical manifestation of his philosophy. Success comes from building something tangible, something that lasts. He settled heavily into his chair, gesturing for Nathan and me to sit across from him. For a long moment, he simply looked. At us, his 2 sons, now grown men, locked in a battle for the future of his life's work. I built Reed Enterprises from nothing, he began, his voice steady despite his weakened state. Every client relationship, every manufacturing innovation, every market expansion, I fought for all of it. I worked 16-hour days for decades to create something that would outlast me. He paused, looking between us. I wanted to pass that legacy to my sons, to both of you. And Nathan shifted forward eagerly. And you did, Dad. I've dedicated my life to Reed Enterprises. To your vision, let me finish. My father cut him off firmly. I wanted to pass on a legacy, but I made a critical mistake. I confused legacy with replication. I wanted you both to be carbon copies of me, to do things exactly as I had done them. This admission from a man who had never acknowledged error left us both speechless. Nathan, he continued, turning to my brother, you did everything I asked. You followed my path exactly, and when the market changed, when the old ways stopped working, you had no tools to adapt because I never encouraged you to think beyond what I had taught you. Nathan's face fell, the truth of the words clearly striking home. My father then turned to me. And Joshua, I rejected your vision because it wasn't mine. I couldn't see that innovation, Evan, if it wasn't tangible in the way I understood was. Exactly what this company needed. He sighed deeply. My stubbornness nearly destroyed everything I built, and it drove a wedge between my sons that may never be repaired. The office fell silent as we absorbed this unprecedented moment of reflection from a man who had always presented himself as infallible. So what happens now? Nathan finally asked, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. My father straightened. In his chair, some of his old authority returning, now we make a choice. We can continue fighting amongst ourselves until there's nothing left to fight over. Or we can find a way forward that preserves the company and gives it a future. He looked at me intently. Joshua, your technology is clearly saving Reed Enterprises. The board sees it. I see it. Even Nathan sees it, though his pride makes it difficult to admit. Nathan started to protest, then fell silent, unable to deny the truth. But technology alone isn't enough, my father continued. Reed Enterprises was built on relationships, on industry knowledge, on manufacturing expertise. Those things still matter. He was right, of course. RapidFlow systems could optimize operations and predict needs. But they couldn't replace the human elements that had made Reed Enterprises successful for 4 decades. What are you suggesting? I asked. A true integration, he replied. Not just of systems, but of leadership. Reed Enterprises needs both innovation and tradition, both new technology and established relationships. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. I'm proposing a new leadership structure. Co-CEOs. Joshua bringing technological innovation and operational efficiency. Nathan maintaining client relationships and industry connections. Each with clear responsibilities, each respecting the others. Domain. Nathan looked stunned. Co-CEOs. That would never work. We'd be fighting constantly. Only if you choose to, my father replied. This isn't just about saving the company anymore. This is about saving our family. It's about building something together instead of tearing each other down. I studied my brother's face, seeing the complex emotions playing across it: anger, fear, uncertainty, and perhaps a glimmer of recognition that our father was offering a path forward that preserved his dignity and position. Nathan said, "Carefully, you know the clients in a way I never will. You understand the industry's history and traditions. That knowledge is invaluable." He looked at me suspiciously, searching for condescension or manipulation in my words. Finding none, his expression slowly shifted. "And your technology is clearly effective," he admitted reluctantly. "The results these past weeks speak for themselves." It wasn't an enthusiastic embrace of collaboration, but it was a startup. Crack in the wall of hostility that had defined our relationship for years. My father nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. "I'll present this structure to the board next week. Until then, I expect both of you to begin figuring out how this partnership might work." As we left his office, Nathan and I found ourselves walking side by side down the corridor, an awkward silence between us. "This won't be easy," he finally said, not looking at me. "No," I agreed, "but maybe it's worth trying." He stopped, turning to face me directly. "I need to know something. Did you come back to take over? Is that always the plan?" I met his gaze steadily. "I came back because Mom called and said the company was in trouble." Everything that followed was just responding to what I found. He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slightly. "Right. Let's see where this goes." It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't even real trust. But as we parted ways in the lobby, each returning to our respective domains within the company, I felt something shift. The war wasn't over, but perhaps a different kind of battle was beginning. Not brother against brother, but the two of us. Together against the challenges facing Reed Enterprises. The integration continued, gaining momentum as more departments came online with the new systems. Early results were promising. Order fulfillment times decreased, inventory costs dropped, and production efficiency improved. The Westbrook negotiations progressed positively, with their representatives impressed by the visible changes in operations. But the real test lay ahead. Could Nathan and I find a way to lead together, to blend innovation with tradition? Could two brothers who had been positioned as rivals for their entire lives become partners? The answers to those questions would determine not just the future of Reed Enterprises, but the future of the Reed family itself. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.